It's an ambush.
Oh my God, it's an ambush!
It's an ambush!
Of course!
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a ambush stream on a Saturday morning. That's what it is. I'm making use of the last of my election night boozy booze, just for the hell of it. Because now we're going to listen to a conversation from TED. This is not a TED Talk. This is not a TEDx Talk. This is a 45-minute long conversation on what is going to occur now that Donald Trump is president once more. Now, I have no idea what's going to be said. It could be something, fairly balanced. It could be something very enthusiastic. Or it could be the doom that came to Sarnath. Or something similar. I guess we'll find out together. Now, as a precursor, I don't know if I can make it through all 45 minutes of this, including my own commentary. It's possible I might just do a section and call it quits. If it's really interesting, maybe I'll do a part 2. Or maybe I'll go the distance, because as this week has already shown, I can at least do 8 hours standing on my head, mostly. But either way, who's joining me on this beautiful Saturday morning? Tall person, good morning. Mr. X51, good morning. JB, good morning. Tier Alexander, good morning. Who else is here? Mike R, good morning to you. Fostonia, good morning. Alice Morgan, good morgen. Guten Morgen, Alice Morgan. I know a little German, and he's sitting over there. Darren Root, good morning. Attack Alpaca, good morning. Leanna Johnston, good morning to you. Keldrig, good morning. Tandamar, good morning. Mike Savage, blarg. Super Mutant 2099, good morning. And the Dead Man, good morning to you. And to anybody I missed, or is lurking, or shows up in the future. So yeah, this is a 45-minute long conversation with Ian Bremmer. Now the name sounds familiar to me, but then I've heard of several Bremmers in the past, so I'm not quite sure how to place it. Maybe I'll have it explained to me by our moderator, our host, or whatever here. So let me turn down the music just a smidge more. We'll keep it in the background, but... Alright, so yes, this is a TED presentation of a conversation with Ian Bremmer, who apparently is some kind of prognosticator about the comings and goings of world events. So that's all I know. That's all I know. Will it be a glorified version of Trump derangement syndrome, or a balanced analytical analysis of what Trump may do? Now remember, Trump has been president before. He had 4 years to do a whole bunch of things. People seem to keep forgetting that in the recent events. But anyway, that's all I've got. Let's begin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Helen Walters. I'm head of media and curation at TED, and I am...
Oh, you're the head of media and curation at TED. I should have a conversation with you about the just absolute downfall of quality in TED Talks, where I can't tell the difference sometimes, and honestly, you guys cross over TED and TEDx Talks. It's something.
Delighted to welcome you to another episode of TED Explains the World.
Oh! I didn't know there was a series called TED Explains the World. I mean, if Ted Theodore Logan showed up to explain the world to me, that's a show I would watch. But no, this is TED Explains the World. With
Ian Bremmer. Ian, of course, is the president and founder of Eurasia Group. He is the head of G0 Media. Oh. And he is here to talk to us about what just happened in the United States. Today...
I wonder if Ian did a pre-election assessment of what would happen. I wonder if Ian predicted Kamala Harris was going to win. Anyway, I guess we'll find out.
Is November the 7th. The election was on November the 5th. President Trump was re-elected in handy terms. So, Ian, please tell us what you make of what is happening right now.
Handy terms. I mean, well, that is the British art of understatement. At this point, Donald Trump won in an absolute landslide. Even San Francisco, apparently. Not that it turned red per se, but it's turned a heck of a lot more purple, which is amazing in the current numbers that have come out. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Ian looks, admittedly, I do not know what Ian looks like on a normal day. The word disheveled comes to mind, but maybe that's just par for the course.
You're right. It is not just the electoral vote, but also the popular vote that Trump was able to win. Mm-hmm. It's close, 51-49. So,
sure, it's close. I mean, at the time of November 7th, they didn't have all the numbers in yet, but it's getting less and less close as the votes come in. But anyway,
half of the Americans went against him, pretty much. We always knew that was going to be the case. So it's not as if the polls were radically off.
No. Guys. It's not that the polls were radically off. It's not that we were saying the Iowa Seltzer poll was the bellwether to the entire nation. No. It's not that we were saying that Kamala was going to be... I mean, and here's the thing. I was taken in, as much as anyone, by the likelihood, at least at the time, that it was going to be very, very close, but that Kamala might squeak by. I really did have concerns that just by the percentages, by some inconsistencies in vote counting, as we saw in 2020, and as people are only now suddenly making some conclusions about, that Kamala might still win. I was taken in. I did not know it was going to be as much of a sweep as it has been so far. But just keep coping, dude. Yeah, the polls weren't wrong, except that they were wrong.
That's not the issue.
No.
One thing that's quite useful, of course, is the fact that a popular vote win, which doesn't always line up with the electoral vote,
which is what happened in 2016,
creates more legitimacy for Trump.
Yes, it definitely gives him much more of a mandate than he would have had otherwise if it was electoral only and not popular. So, yes.
And the fact that this wasn't just a matter of one or two states, and that it's clear that there was neither significant internal nor definitive external interference. Clearly, there was a lot of disinformation.
Yeah, disinformation mostly from the Democratic Party.
Bomb threats mailed in, called in by the Russians, but nothing that would have changed the outcome.
Yes, thankfully. I don't want any interference from outside parties or inside parties.
And so you were able to not only get Kamala Harris to concede in short order.
Well, yes, she conceded the next day. She did call Donald Trump. She should have come out that night to her supporters. I still think it is the epitome of low class that she sent out one of her staff members to address the crowd, rather than herself having the integrity and the maturity of coming out onto that stage at Howard University and addressing the crowd. All those people who had come out to celebrate her potential win, but she left them hanging. I understand it's going to be a footnote in the grand scheme of things, but just like Hillary Clinton, that is low. That is just low.
But Democrats across the board, whether or not they're happy with it, recognizing that Trump is indeed their president.
Well, not across the board, but yeah, there's very little room to argue given the outcome, especially after 4+ odd years of deriding anybody who would ask whether or not an election has gone sideways illegitimately.
Unlike in 2020, where Trump himself precipitated a very significant challenge, saying that the vote was rigged and undermining the legitimacy of the outcome.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think it's the old Russian saying, everything is understood by comparison. We had the number of votes cast in 2016. We have the number of votes cast in 2020, reportedly, and we have the number of votes cast in 2024. And comparing the two sides of the sandwich to the meat in the middle, There's a lot of missing votes that just suddenly aren't there the third time around. It's causing a whole lot of questions, especially even from the Democrats. Like, where was all of the Biden supporters from 2020 this time around? I don't know, dude.
Here we do not have that.
True.
Furthermore, the Republicans have, as of now, taken the Senate. Of course,
Yep.
Conservative justices have a majority on the Supreme Court.
Yes, and of course, those conservative justices on the Supreme Court have always agreed with anything that would have helped Trump. Right? I love it every time that a story comes out where the Supreme Court goes against Trump, just kind of gets kind of shunted off to the side. Because now we have to believe in the myth that if a Supreme Court is populated with individuals who lean conservative, then they're just in the tank for the conservative party and or a particular president at any given time for any given choice. But we don't want to talk about that. Anyway.
And the Republicans, in short order, are very likely, overwhelmingly likely, to have a majority in the House as well. And what that means is that the Trump administration will be able to pursue the agenda, both domestically and in foreign policy, that they have said that they wish to pursue.
Well, I mean, it's more likely than not that he'll have fewer obstacles to do so. But that's not to say there's not going to be opposition either from the Democrats in a way procedurally that could stumble things, nor that there won't be some Republicans that disagree with Trump. But yeah, for the first 2 years at least of his administration, things are going to be far more easy for him to do than if things were balanced the other way.
For example, on tariffs or on taxes,
Sure.
or on immigration. All of these things that Trump was running on and now will have a mandate to pursue. So that is the long and short of what happened on Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. I really needed an expert opinion on that one. The question is now, how effectively will Trump fulfill his promises? That's what I'm looking at just as the observer of things. I want the economy to improve. I want illegal immigration to drop. I want our involvement and intertwining in foreign wars to change. I can't say it's case by case basis, but what we've been doing and the amount of money we've been dumping into other countries when our infrastructure is falling apart, when people in disaster zones are suffering more so than they should. If we can't take care of our own first and foremost, why are we dumping money into places that's just a money pit, into corrupt countries and wars and things that, yeah, it just, I don't know. It might be the pepper jack talking.
So you talk about tariffs, you talk about taxes. A lot has been said about the fact that Americans were voting related to the economy and how they felt about the economy.
Yes, the economy, where people are paying far more for groceries, having to make choices between, do I pay rent this month or do I feed my family? All those kind of concerns, which were completely dismissed and like, oh, that's not true. We have the greatest economy in the world, we were told over and over and over again by the Democrats. Yeah, tell that to my bottom line every month. Tell that to the fact that the same kinds of groceries I was paying $25 for 3 or 4 years ago suddenly now cost me $50. I mean, come on.
Do you agree with that? And what do you think that Trump will do with fiscal policy when he actually comes into the presidency again?
Well, he can't do much worse than spending $100,000 to recreate a podcast set in Washington, D.C. so Kamala Harris didn't have to fly out to Los Angeles. You guys know about that story? I'm gonna go into that story on Sunday, on the Sunday stream, because that, man, that's something else.
Well, let's talk about what Americans voted on.
Wait a second. Is Sinatra in here? I say so. Somebody said Sinoot. It's Sinatra. Sinatra Says is here. Oh my gosh. I got to at least acknowledge Sinatra Says being here. Hey, Sinatra, how's it going? All right, so yes, fiscal policy.
They voted on a country whose direction they did not agree with.
Yes, correct. I feel like we don't need our speaker here. I could just do this.
Over 70% of Americans, Helen, say that they did not agree with where the country was heading. And
yes.
When that happens, it is very, very hard to win as an incumbent.
Well, except that Kamala Harris wasn't the incumbent. She did represent the current administration. She could have distanced herself from Biden. She should have distanced herself from Biden. You know, when she was asked on The View, is there anything you would have changed about the last 3 years? And I'm paraphrasing. If she had actually come out and said something to the effect of, you know, I was there with Biden during most of the major decisions. When he asked me for my advice, I gave it to him, as was my prerogative as vice president, and he made the final decisions. There's several things that I would have done differently, and I respect his decisions, but I would have done this, or I would have done that, or I would have done this. It would at least have been honest, or felt more honest, and would have at least shown that, you know, she has a mind of her own. But she didn't do that. She said, no, there was no problems at all. Nah, everything was fine. So she might as well have been the incumbency at that point, I suppose.
And Vice President Harris may not be the president.
No, she's definitely not, and will never be.
But she certainly had accountability for alignment with the policies of her Biden administration.
Yes, and she did nothing to diverge from them.
And when she was asked on the media, when she started doing her media tour after the debate with Trump.
Not on the media. I think you're going to be talking about The View.
You know, what would you do differently from Biden? Her response, and this is the most important question that you could ask her.
Yeah, more or less. I'm wondering now, do I even need to listen to this guy? I could be doing this.
In this campaign,
yeah.
Her response was, I can't think of anything that I would do differently. So most important question, worst possible answer. And she tried to amend that in various ways.
She did?
Later on, but she
Okay.
was never able to really get away from what she would do differently from Biden and why she would do it differently. I mean,
which is incredible, because if you think about it, and I've tried to stress this point, it's not like Kamala Harris, this was her first rodeo. She ran for president in 2019. She thought she was ready to lead the country 5 years ago. She thought she was ready to sit in the Oval Office as of 2019. And yet, even through a failed presidential campaign that wasted a $40 million war chest, and I got more to say about that tomorrow, even through running a successful campaign alongside Biden, even after being vice president for 3.5 years, she gets to the point where she's going to be the presidential candidate. And you're telling me that she doesn't have any ideas of her own that either she could resurface from her 2019 campaign. She hasn't thought about it since then. She hasn't gamed out with her staff. Well, what if something happens to the president and I have to run for president in 2024? Maybe we should have a plan ahead of time. Nothing? It really, I have no other way to look at it. It really feels like Kamala Harris spent the last 3.5 years twiddling her thumbs and not thinking about the contingencies of the possibility that Biden could either have a problem medically or otherwise, or, at least in the early years, choose to stick to his original pledge not to run again. What were you doing this whole time? You've got no strategy of your own. You've got no platform unique from your boss. I am so glad she lost this election.
And she moved a number of her policies in a more centrist direction, but she didn't really explain it. She didn't really disassociate herself from previous iterations of her policies.
I would, you know, maybe I should have done this ahead of time. I'd love to know what this guy thought the outcome of the election was going to be before the election. Did he think that Kamala Harris was going to win? I'm really curious now. Maybe I'll have to do like a part 2 just to try to find something from him beforehand.
So pretty much everybody out there that was unsatisfied with where the United States is going felt like she did not represent change.
Well, she did not represent change, demonstrably so.
And she's younger, she's different,
she's younger, she's different,
the first woman. From
Yeah.
a policy perspective, they didn't believe that she represented change. And of course, Helen, this is what we have seen around the world. In the developed world, every democracy that has had an election this year has voted against their incumbents.
Okay. Well, I'll so far at least, I'll appreciate the fact that he's not going down the route of the American electorate is sexist or racist or something. Unlike, say, Morning Joe or whoever.
Canada's probably about to have one. They will also throw out Trudeau unceremoniously.
Is that so? I might need to ask my Canadian friends. Is Trudeau on the way out? I honestly admit I have not paid attention that much to Canadian politics recently. I would be glad for it. Trudeau has been an absolute disaster for years now. I'm surprised that he's been there as long as he has been. Are Canadians about to kick him out?
A lot of developing countries, India, Modi was doing pretty well. Now he's in coalition. South Africa, the ANC for the first time since Mandela, now in coalition. Mexico is the only country of note that had an election this year, in the year of elections, that actually returned the same party.
Yeah, Obrador to Scheinbaum. And Scheinbaum, God, yeah, the president of Mexico was like, I'm not going to recognize Donald Trump until every vote is counted. And then like 2 hours later, she had to walk all that back because people were probably yelling in her ear, you idiot, do not alienate Donald Trump when it comes to foreign policy right now. You do not want to have an enemy of Donald Trump when we've got border issues. He will send everybody back. He will make us pay for it on and on and on. Man, I cannot wait to see the first meeting between Scheinbaum and Trump. That's going to be... oh, Jesus. Yeah. If I were Trump after something like that, I'd say, well, I'm not going to recognize you until the cartels are brought under control. You're the president of Mexico. Get the cartels under control before I'll recognize you as president. Jesus.
And, you know, in many ways, because the Morena Party and AMLO are still seen as the outsiders against a deep, entrenched, you know, sort of power of existing oligarchs, business, you know, and the like.
When are we going to get to the Donald Trump predictions? I was promised Donald Trump predictions.
But if anything, they're the exception that proves the rule. And so, you know, you and I know, we've talked about this before.
If you say so. I didn't know this was a series. I'm going to have to go back and see if I can find some schadenfreude to look at.
I expected that Trump would win.
You did? Oh, okay. Well, I guess I have my answer.
I didn't have strong confidence in that call.
So you did expect it, but you didn't?
Because Trump was himself very unpopular.
Apparently not. So you expected Trump to win, but you weren't confident in that call because Trump was not popular. But now he's gained the popular vote and a majority of electoral votes.
But to the extent that anyone you would think would win an election in this environment globally, it was Trump's to lose.
You know, hedging is such a glorified word.
You know, he was able to pull it through. So I think that's the backdrop for what people were voting about. And specifically what it is inflation.
It's the economy, stupid.
Which is high.
Yes.
And it's been coming down, but the overall prices, it's not like the prices are lower than they were a year ago just because the inflation rate is coming down. Those prices are still very high.
Yes.
And you can't run away from that if you're Harris.
No, but she certainly tried.
Immigration, something that, frankly, the Biden administration was very late to recognize was a problem, not just in red states, but in blue states too.
Illegal I have been frustrated by this for years and years and years. I have a whole playlist on my channel called Expatriate Games talking about this. Illegal immigration. Americans are not against immigration writ large. If someone wants to come to this country legally, if they have something to contribute to this country for the betterment of this country, if they jump through all the hoops, and I understand our immigration system is an absolute mess. I have witnessed the process from the sidelines with a coworker of mine. I understand that. But regardless, if you jump through the hoops and you follow the rules and you become a citizen or a legal resident, good on you. But Americans writ large are not against immigration. It's illegal trespassers. Stop conflating this notion. Stop accusing Americans of being isolationist to people who would follow the law and the rules to become citizens. Thank you, John Miller. Appreciate it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the man is full of it. Biden dropped like a rock, and Kami, well, she never had a chance in Hades in 3 months. See, I was drawn in by this same concern. I wasn't sure, up until the night of the election, obviously, that I'm not Trump, just as much of a wind at the back as it was for Biden in 2020, wouldn't as well push Kamala Harris into the White House. I wasn't sure. I was having flashbacks on Tuesday night as I did back in 2016. It's going to be close, but I think Clinton is going to win. Or I think it's possible. I guess I wasn't as assured this time around that Harris was going to win, but I thought it was a better than fair shot, all things considered. So I'm glad that she didn't. Boy, oh boy, am I glad that she didn't. And as we're finding out more information specifically about how she spent her campaign funds, we'll talk about that on Sunday. But thank you. Thank you, John Miller.
And those numbers are coming down, but the illegal immigrants that came to the U.S. are largely still in the U.S.
Those numbers are coming down only because Biden changed his policies at the 11th hour, which he could have done 3 years ago. He was making the absolute liar's claim that he needed Congress to pass some new law before he could have the tools to address the problem. No, he always had the power to do it. Now, admittedly, I am less a fan of executive orders to solve a problem than I am for Congress to do their job and to refine or change the law. But in the midst of an emergency, Biden had the power to change things from the get-go. He chose not to. All of his and Kamala's rhetoric before they were elected to office said otherwise. It's only, strangely enough, it's only after a mass immigration to blue states of illegal immigrants that suddenly things start to change. In New York and Chicago and Denver, all of the sudden, all those sanctuary cities and sanctuary states actually had to put their money where their mouth was, literally. And then, leading up to the election, suddenly Biden falls back on Trump policies to try to fill up the gap ahead of the election. Oh, that which he could never have done without Congress passing a law. Absolute stupidity. Thank you, Fostonia. Appreciate it. If there was a bona fide Democratic primary with Biden bowing out, I wonder if we would be in a different position. Well, we'll never know. And here's the thing. All of this is Biden's fault. All of it. First and foremost, for picking Kamala Harris for no other reason than her gender and her appearance. That's it. That was the deciding factor first and foremost. It obviously wasn't because of her political savvy. It obviously wasn't because she was going to carry some state or had some stake in some red state or something. She couldn't even carry her own state. California didn't even back her in the primaries. She spent $40 million on her campaign, and even her own home state would not back her in the primaries back in 2020. It was incredible. For some reason, so she's the prime pick. So Biden picking her in the first place was the first big mistake. The second big mistake Biden made was running again. He said he was going to just be an interim president, a sort of gap president. He wasn't going to run a second time. But when his ego got the better of him, and when everybody around him, Nancy Pelosi included, Obama included, everybody else that would eventually push him out, decided not to say anything, that was the second big mistake. Every single day that he was running for re-election was a day he was stealing from a possibly more qualified Democratic candidate. And actually giving not only the Democratic Party, but the American people a real choice in the matter. Yeah, so as far as the outcome of this, the Democrats have no one else to blame but Biden, and then dissolve from that to Harris for how she decided to run her admittedly truncated campaign. But truncated only because Biden denied her the possibility of having a fair campaign. So, yeah, this all goes back to Biden. But the responsibility and the eventual outcome does fall to Harris. Because whatever encumbrances you might legitimately apply to Harris's campaign as coming from Biden, the choices that she has made in her vice presidential pick and how she decided to spend $1 billion of a Kamala Harris and the Democrats had $1 billion. And as of last reporting, they are now something like $20 to $40 million in debt. They were asking for donations from campaign supporters after the election to help make up the millions of dollars in debt that they are in. They spent $1 billion trying to beat Trump. It's amazing. Where did all that money go? Probably into celebrity endorsements and concerts that never happened. Anyway, I digress.
And then also disinformation.
Disinformation? Oh, like Donald Trump wants to put Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad?
A large amount of disinformation that has made it almost impossible to have a national debate on policies and issues.
Okay, well, give us some examples of this disinformation.
And an awful lot of people, even that align with Harris's policies, didn't necessarily believe that she was implementing them.
Well, they couldn't believe she was implementing them because she didn't. Again and again and again, she would bring up some policy proposal or whatever else for the future, and everybody would ask, legitimately, why isn't this being done now? If it's such a great idea, why hasn't Biden implemented it? Or why haven't you been able to convince Biden of its efficacy, and it's already been implemented in the last 3.5 years to that point?
Biden was implementing them. A lot of people in America think that the inflation rate is still the highest ever, think that unemployment is a lot higher than it has been. And the people that say that and believe that were far more likely to vote against the incumbent. So
are you saying that the inflation rate, the cost of living, the unemployment rate, the difficulty in finding a job, buying a home, having some upward mobility in this country in this day and age, are you saying that's all just a fiction? Are you saying that everybody's just sort of imagining that? Because I've seen this argument being made the last several days. That, oh, well, Trump won on the basis of a bunch of people believing that things are really as bad as he tells them they are. Are you sure about that?
So I would say, in descending order of importance, what drove this election was inflation.
The economy's stupid.
Immigration.
Illegal immigration.
And disinformation. And
lying from the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris specifically. Also, running to Godwin's law of, I've run out of arguments, therefore Hitler.
That is something that we have seen all around the world this year.
All around the world. Am I in a Daft Punk song or something? Okay, so are you trying to like say, oh, well, America's just a victim of a trend? There's nothing specific or reasonable or rational about the arguments against Kamala Harris this time around. It's all just, oh, well, you know, if everybody jumps off a bridge, I guess we will. It's just peer pressure. It's just international peer pressure. That's what I'm hearing.
I think I think it's all incredibly interesting. And you said something interesting that I want to just double click on there, which is.
Man, that's some corporate speak right there. You said something interesting. I'd like to double click on that. I'll double click on that. I don't want to K-line your argument, but I'm going to double click on it instead.
This idea that people have feelings about the way things are. And
yes, people have feelings about the way things are. Are you trying to... You're not trying to go down the path of people are just imagining things, are you?
And they don't necessarily know what the actual facts about a situation are.
Oh, right. Yeah, everybody that voted for Donald Trump is just an idiot. Everybody that voted for Donald Trump doesn't see the reality of their bank balance month over month. They're just imagining things, guys. They're just falling for the narrative. They're so stupid that they're being brought in by disinformation.
So this is also an election in which there has been plenty of disinformation.
Oh my God, how many times have we heard the word disinformation in this talk so far?
As you say, Elon Musk wrote yesterday on X, "You are the media now."
Well, is he wrong?
And I think we can argue a lot about how the media has covered the election.
Yeah, we can argue a lot about how the media's covered the election. How across the board, even Fox News to a certain extent, has been in the tank for the Democratic Party. Do you want to talk about that?
About the way that the media reports things, the horse race, all of that vapidity, all of that type of thing.
Yeah, but I guess we're not going to talk about that, are we?
But am I alone in finding that type of statement both facile and alarming? And
facile? Not if you're actually paying attention. Alarming? I suppose only if you have a vested interest in maintaining the legacy media.
Isn't that driving us even further into a future where there are these kind of fractured narratives or fractured truths that people have that actually don't coalesce to reality or accuracy?
Well, okay, that would assume that the mainstream legacy media is actually being honest in the first place. And it's demonstrably has not been. Can we count the ways in which every time Trump says something that is then cherry-picked and reframed and taken out of context and turned into something it wasn't? The most recent and egregious example was the Liz Cheney example. Trump was making an argument about war hawks, right? Sitting safely in their Washington, D.C. offices, spouting and pontificating about sending troops off to war to solve this problem or otherwise, without thinking about or having any personal experience in the consequences of such decisions. And what does Trump say? Oh, how would Liz Cheney like it if she was holding a rifle and had 9 guns pointed at her face? Oh, well, no. Donald Trump wasn't making a statement about the frivolousness of sending people off to war by D.C. bureaucrats. No. Donald Trump was saying Liz Cheney should be put in front of a firing squad and executed. That is what we heard for days after that from the mainstream media, over and over again. And it was a challenge to try to find the entire quotation of what he said in any mainstream publication. I looked. Because on the day that came out, I remember I woke up, I put a tweet out about this. I woke up and I saw this headline, and my immediate reaction was, this is BS, right? Not because I'm some rampant Trump supporter, but just because I recognize the patterns of history and how the media loves to take Trump out of context for something. So even before I could find the full quote, and it was a slog to find anybody who had a transcript of the whole quote until I could find the video of it, I knew it was BS. And it turned out to be BS. Total and absolute BS. But no, there was no end on the victimization of Liz Cheney and the accusation that Donald Trump was going to line up his enemies on a wall if he got elected. I don't think our moderator here really wants to acknowledge the reality of the situation. The mainstream media is dead. Legacy media is dead. New media is on the rise because there's no corporate filter. There's no ESG, DEI constraints on people like Joe Rogan, on Tucker Carlson, on Ben Shapiro. Well, maybe a little bit there because Daily Wire's not exactly free of anything. But you know what I'm talking about. Now, anybody on YouTube, whether it's Sinatra Says or Ranting Monkey or myself or Midnight's Edge, we're not getting some kind of corporate sponsorship or something. We call it as we see it. Maybe we're wrong, maybe we're right, but you don't have to doubt whether or not we're filtered or unfiltered. And we're certainly not tied to some kind of narrative. Now, some of us, there's always irate hours. I don't know why I just played that, just for the fun of it. Thank you, JB. Appreciate it. I say make the election as complicated as can be. I assume next time, make the voting machine a Dr. Seuss nightmare machine. No. I know you're joking, but no. Require identification and go back to paper in-person voting. That's what it should be. You go to your voting place, you show your ID, you get your ballot, you vote, you walk out. There's no reason why we can't go back to that. There's no reason why we can't make Election Day a holiday or make the weekend that precedes it a time where you can cast your ballot. I'm all for early voting, but I'm more for in-person, show your ID, vote voting. Not mail-in voting, not make it abstract, make everybody accountable, both for voting themselves and also the people having to record them. Might sound archaic, but there's no reason why we can't do that. And there's no reason why any state or any county should be going like, oh, we're not going to have the results for another week or something. It's nonsense. Nonsense.
Well, see, when I saw it from Elon, I'm like, I thought he was talking to me and saying, Ian, you're media now. I'm like, well, about time.
People who are untethered from the mainstream corporate media are far more trusted now than the mainstream media. And whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? The mainstream media. There's nobody else to blame. The only reason Joe Rogan is trusted more than the Washington Post is because of the Washington Post, just as one example. Okay? If the mainstream media actually adhered to the kind of values and integrity of a Edgar R. Murrow or something, then it wouldn't be the case. But it's not.
Right?
Right.
Here I am, a political scientist, but I'm talking to a lot of people. So
I guess you are. I've never heard of you before, or if I have, it's been very abstract. But you go, you.
Yeah, they should be thinking about me as media. Of course, that's not what he was saying.
Of course, that's what he was saying. I mean, unless you're tethered to mainstream corporate media, I don't know if you're getting the point.
What he was saying is that the mainstream media,
yeah,
CNN, MSNBC, Fox,
yeah,
and by the way, he never includes Fox, even though Fox is every bit as much mainstream media as the other two because he likes one ideologically now. He doesn't like the other two, but.
Did he exclude Fox in that tweet? I thought he just said Oh, okay.
You might as well have some intellectual consistency around it.
I don't have the tweet in front of me. Did Elon Musk say the mainstream media except Fox?
His view is that all of those publications, cable news, that they are fake news because...
They're not fake news. They're untrustworthy news. Writ large. I mean, they have sunk their own credibility over years. Thank you again, John Miller. We have been unburdened by media has-beens. You have modified my tweet. I thought about this before the election. I was like, if Kamala Harris loses, I'm going to tweet out, we have been unburdened by a has-been. I probably should have said from a has-been, but I was trying to stay within as much line of her own quote as possible. I should have said from a has-been, but oh well. People still like that one. Thank you, John Miller. Yeah, the mainstream media, the mainstream pollsters, everybody else, if they didn't get a clue from the 2016 election and all of their assurances that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide, maybe they'll get a clue now. I'm not sure. I think a lot of places like just look at the political landscape. California, Minnesota. They're all doubling down on being part of the resistance against Trump. I mean, fingers crossed that the news and entertainment industry finally gets a hint, but like I said on Midnight's Edge the other day, never count out the danger of a cornered animal.
Because, of course, he's not making money out of those. And that Twitter X is real news and that citizen journalists are the real media.
Well, citizen journalists are far more trustworthy now than the legacy media. That's the lesson here. It doesn't mean that they're always right, but you don't have to worry about whether or not you're being fed a particular message from a particular outlet. You can at least assess what somebody has to say on its own merits, rather than being suspicious based on a pattern of behavior.
Now, I have a lot of things to criticize mainstream media for.
Proceed. I'm here to hear it.
I believe that they have gotten way too high on their own supply, focusing on their own interests, their own clicks, their own news. They're less trusted than they used to be.
But
we see that across the country.
But
they're more politicized.
But
they're more for their own candidate, whether it's Fox on the right or CNN and MSNBC on the left.
I'm waiting for the but. Come on, drop the but. That actually sounds kind of gross when I say it like that. Come on, give me the but.
But but at least the journalists on Fox, not Hannity, but the journalists during the day that are writing the stories and bringing you the news, the journalists during the day on CNN, MSNBC, the journalists that are working on the Wall Street Journal, and
the journalists,
the New York Times, not the opinion leaders.
Oh, stop qualifying it. Get to the point.
But most of the people that are actually doing the reporting, they have expertise.
Expertise in what? Expertise in what? Memory holding things and reframing things into nonsense propaganda? Thank you, Deadman. Appreciate it very much. I honestly thought there would have been some reflection on why the left lost, but it's clear that they're just going to double down. I think the margins for people to operate within self-delusion are definitely shrinking. I think, especially with as decisive as this election has been, I think it's going to be far more difficult for people to self-dilute in a lot of places. But the strongholds, the bastions of the resistance, they'll keep pushing and pushing hard. We're seeing so many flashbacks to 2016 that it's going to be a slow decline in the power of the woke, the power of the social justice, the power of we're the resistance, we're the moral good, and so on and so forth. But my fingers are crossed that things are changing. Because if you just look at the vote counts and the county-by-county results for, say, California. Do I still have that image? Oh, I had that map from the other day. I don't think I have it in front of me. You can probably find it online. There's a breakdown of what the county-by-county results for the election were compared to 2020 to 2024 in California. California, certainly a blue bastion, a blue fortress for so long. And now, for the most part, most of the blue is just on the coastline. And the rest of the state is starting to turn red. So if there's any indication as to how the culture might shift in the near term, we can hope some more rationale will start to defeat some of this nonsense. But yeah, no, a lot of places are like Gavin Newsom and Waltz over in Minnesota. They say, "Oh, we're gonna fight back against Donald Trump. We're gonna make sure that our state is going to fight back. So we're going to make preliminary action and laws and policies and everything to make sure that we resist whatever he's going to do." Officials in the Pentagon are already gaming out how they're going to defy Donald Trump if he makes an illegal order or something. Yeah, like I say, do not underestimate the danger of a cornered animal.
They've been trained.
The journalists have expertise. They've been trained, and the results of their work has been what? To the benefit and the credibility of the legacy media.
And of course, the big difference between citizen journalists, if you want to call them that,
I don't call myself a journalist. I wouldn't call myself a journalist in any way, shape, or form. You know, not unless or until, in some instance, I start doing some investigating or some comparing and contrasting between past events and current events or something, or start asking. No. I've done a little bit of investigative type commentary before. And I've certainly tried to bring things from the fringe to light to people over the last 8 years. I'm a glorified schmuck who just talks about things.
So it's people that are posting random information that
it's not random. It's very selective. Thank you very much.
they think about on social media. Number one, they tend to have stronger biases because it is not their professional job to try to mitigate them when they present things.
What are you... Wait, are you saying that journalists in mainstream media, their professional job is to avoid bias? What did you just say a minute ago? Dude, there are countless people out there right now who would call themselves journalists who are so in the tank for one side or the other that it's not even an argument. And the media writ large was trying so hard. They were bending over backwards in the majority to tell us that Kamala Harris was a viable candidate. They ignored the last 3.5 years of her effective irrelevancy in the Biden administration. They ignored just how unpopular she was up until Biden dropped out. They ignored all of the cries and the begging of the DNC and the Biden administration to drop her from the ticket over the last 3 years. They ignored all of that. And then all of a sudden, she becomes the anointed nominee, and I was like, oh my God, Kamala's the best thing since sliced bread. Are you out of your mind? Sorry, who has the bias here?
Number two,
oh.
They aren't professionally trained, so they don't have as much expertise.
You're right. I'm not professionally trained. I don't have any expertise. What kind of expertise do you think I should acquire? What kind of expertise to be able to look at a situation and assess it objectively do you think I require? Oh, I'm being told the economy's the strongest in the world. And yet, my bills have gone up exponentially in the last 3 years. And the value of my investments have gone down exponentially. Just as an example, when I was I think I was 14 or 15 or something. My parents bought for my sister and I mutual funds. Not very expensive ones, but they set up some mutual funds, or a mutual fund, I should say, for my sister and I. We each had our own. And it wasn't until in my 20s or something that I was making enough money that I could start to contribute to that mutual fund. And so with every paycheck, small amount of money would come out of my paycheck and go towards this mutual fund. And over the course of the Obama administration, despite the fact that I was putting money into it every single month, it was stagnant in its value. Absolutely stagnant. For 8 years, every time I'd get a statement on that mutual fund, it would either go up $100 or go down $100. It was going nowhere. And I just kind of wrote this off as just, well, I guess this is just the way things are. And yet every month, out of my paycheck, money was going into this mutual fund. Now, setting aside what was going into taxes. And then Donald Trump became president. And within the first year of Donald Trump becoming president, the value of that mutual fund jumped through the roof. And holy cats, I was like, oh my God. And by the time Donald Trump was up for re-election, the value of my mutual fund had nearly doubled from where it was during the entirety of the Obama administration. And do you know what happened in the first 6 months of Joe Biden becoming president? It dropped back down to just slightly above Obama levels. I lost all the value that I had purportedly gained in the previous 4 years. And it has struggled to even reach anywhere near Trump numbers since then. And I've been putting money into it every single month loyally, purportedly preparing for my future in some way, shape, or form. I don't know what to tell you. The proof is in the pudding, dude. It's not, I'm not imagining things. And people constantly telling me what I should think reality is does not translate over into what I see on the printed page or what I see in my bank account.
In how to deliver that message and how to ensure that a headline is a headline and you follow through with arguments and you actually properly cite things and there's research.
Do you want to, okay, this was recorded after the whole Liz Cheney thing. Do you want to address, at least as an example, the Liz Cheney thing? The Liz Cheney firing squad thing? I mean, just as the most recent egregious example of media manipulation of words. Do you want to at least touch upon that?
And then number three, a lot of the so-called citizen journalists.
So-called citizen journalists. I mean, I'm a citizen. I wouldn't call myself a journalist. Who are you talking? Are you talking about Joe Rogan?
The verified citizen journalists.
What is a verified citizen journalist?
That have blue checks.
Dude, blue checks are on sale right now. Everybody and their brother can get a blue check. What are you talking about? Where have you been? Blue checks just mean that you have a subscription.
Are bots.
What? Are bots? What?
And are anonymous.
What?
And aren't actually people.
Oh, so everybody with a blue check is not actually people. Anybody in chat? Let me ask you. Anybody in chat? Maybe you are all AI or something. Does anybody in the chat have a blue check mark on their Twitter account? Do you have a blue check on your Twitter account? And the second question is, if you do you honestly consider yourself a citizen journalist simply on the basis of having a blue check mark? So, 1, do you have a blue check mark? Yes or no? And 2, are you thus a citizen journalist? And here's the thing. If you didn't have a blue check mark on your Twitter account, could you still be a journalist? Let's see. Plague Trucker. Ooh, Scribe. I'm a verified citizen journalist. I guess so. You have a blue check mark. But are you a real person? Supermutant 299. Does that make me a journalist? Do you have a blue check mark? A guy in his room. Our bots are doing podcasts? Well, I suppose not, or I suppose so, because anybody with a blue check mark is obviously a bot. So if you actually have a show, if you actually speak your mind, if you actually go on camera or something and go on a panel discussion or whatever, and you have a blue check mark, I guess you're not really real. Darren Root, I don't have a Twitter. You don't have a Twitter? Darren Root, what's wrong with you? How dare you? I'm kidding. Super Mutant, no, but I do more journalism than the likes of Rachel Maddow. Maybe I should. Hey, this is your golden ticket, everybody. If you have an opinion and you've got a blue check mark, or even if you don't, speak your mind. You're part of the new media. And obviously you don't actually exist, according to this guy, because you're just a bot, I guess.
Or are bad actors.
Bad actors, based on what?
That are actively pursuing and displaying disinformation for
like what? Give me an example. What are you talking about?
their own purposes.
Displaying disinformation for their own purposes. Like who? Like what?
And that is, of course, the antithesis of what information, political information is necessary to run a civil society.
What? Okay, you want to run a civil society, everybody gets to speak their piece. Everybody gets to speak their piece, and everybody listening to said piece gets to make up their own minds, gets to assess the merit of what someone says on their own. Right? You want to provide as much sunlight as possible to every idea, whether it's demonstrably good or demonstrably bad. In fact, you want to give as much exposure as possible to ideas that may be bad or may be dangerous, so that better ideas can see them out the door. What are you advocating for exactly? Anybody who has a podcast, who has an opinion contrary or antithetical to the mainstream media should be considered, what? Unimportant? Or unnecessary? Irrelevant? Because the expertise is really with the quote-unquote journalists?
I deeply worry that we are in an environment where almost everyone I know,
almost everyone okay.
educated people in the United States.
I have an English degree. I'm somewhat educated.
That voted for Trump and voted for Harris. Believe things. Believe some fundamental things about the political system in the U.S. that are not true.
Such as? Would you like to give us an example? I'll be surprised. Thank you again, John Miller. You know, the sheer hubris of 2012 still lingers. The left, quote, "We will never lose again. We are right forever," unquote. That's essentially what Maddow said in 2012. Man, I tell you what. I used to watch Rachel Maddow all the time. I remember back when I got my current job, back in like 2007, 2008. I used to watch Rachel Maddow on the regular. I used to watch the Young Turks on the regular. Keith Olbermann. I used to be a really big fan of Keith Olbermann. Back when the Iraq War was going on, Keith Olbermann was one of the few journalists, or let's say talking heads at the time, who actually vociferously came out against the Bush administration, went out against the party line of like, well, the president says this, therefore we can't disagree. Because I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that disagreeing with the president, quote unquote, in a time of war, in a time of crisis, was somehow unpatriotic or treasonous or something, as we were told over and over again, between freedom fries, etc. And Keith Olbermann made some really good points in dissenting against Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and George Bush. I used to watch those guys all the time, but over time, just listening to what they had to say and trying to take in and trying to extend to them some kind of sense of credibility when Obama came into office, and I remember this very distinctly. I forget exactly what the situation was, but I was listening to Rachel Maddow, and Obama had done something or made some decision that was just, to my mind, ridiculously bad or stupid or ill-advised. And she glossed over it and started criticizing Republicans for criticizing Obama. And I thought, wait a second. No, that's not reasonable. That's not rational. That's partisan. That's completely in the tank. Maybe I'd fooled myself up to that point, but otherwise I was like, I thought Rachel Maddow was sort of like a reasonable person. And I didn't have some kind of like gigantic shift politically. I didn't suddenly become a Republican or a dyed-in-the-wool conservative. I was just listening to what she said in comparison to what I thought her stance was on reason and logic. And I was just like, what? And I never really paid attention to her after that. I was like, I can't trust you anymore. You're completely in the tank for Obama. You're not willing to criticize Obama over something that's demonstrably wrong. Same thing with the Young Turks. When the whole Ferguson thing happened, their coverage of Michael Brown was so just absolutely bonkers in the tank for the conspiracy theories and everything else, not waiting until there was actually a report. And by the time there was actually a report on what happened, I remember Cenk Uygur having to come out and sort of say, okay, well, this is what was discovered about what happened between Michael Brown and the police officer. And I remember so distinctly listening to him recite what the official report found, and I was waiting for him to apologize. I was waiting for him to apologize for him and Anna Kasparian and everybody else there at the Young Turks, whipping everybody else into an absolute frothing frenzy on hands up, don't shoot. But I never heard it. I never heard them say, okay, well, we were wrong. We got it wrong, and we apologize. I never heard that. And that's when I stopped listening to the Young Turks. You know, there comes a point at which I can only sort of go along to get along enough to where I can't respect myself anymore. I'm like, no. I mean, if everybody you don't like is in power and you have legitimate criticisms, great. But it really, the test is when someone that you purportedly like is in power and you never criticize them, that's when everything goes sideways. For me, at least. Those incidents, my falling out of favor, I suppose, or appreciation for Rachel Maddow, the Young Turks, Keith Olbermann, that's where I found myself in sort of a, I don't know, political wasteland of I can't really trust anybody except on the day that they say something, and then I have to assess it on its own merits. I can't just go along to get along because you're on, quote unquote, the correct side of the argument. I think those were my formative years leading up to my YouTube hobby.
I mean, the number of people that I have spoken to that believe that large numbers of non-citizens vote in the United States, which has been, assertively researched and audited, and you're talking about less than 1/100th of 1%.
So non-citizens are voting in the United States?
Of Americans.
Well, no, they're not Americans. If they're not citizens, they're not Americans.
Non-citizens that are on the rolls.
Okay, well, you've already screwed up your entire argument then. So there are non-citizen, non-Americans on the rolls. There are already non-citizen, non-Americans who have voted. And you cannot tell me that there are not efforts in place to allow non-citizens to vote in elections. Come on. Come on, dude.
It is not an issue.
Well, it's not an issue? Then why is it even allowed at all? Why are there initiatives in place or in process to try to give amnesty to illegal immigrants to allow them the right to vote?
And yet you wouldn't know that if you read Elon's posts because he actively has worked to promote that lie.
It's a lie? Okay. So there are none, and have been, no initiatives or efforts made to extend a kind of amnesty or otherwise to illegal immigrants and allow people the right to vote without having to identify themselves with official papers. That's not the policy in many states across this country right now, where you can vote and not have to present ID that shows you are a legal resident and or citizen of the United States. Are you sure about that?
As strongly as he can.
Okay, so everybody who's concerned about illegal immigration or inflated vote totals on the basis of illegal immigrants is wrong.
And I think that's a horrible thing. And I have seen that. I mean, I saw most recently, I know a lot of Democrats that believed, a lot of Harris supporters that believed that Trump actually called for Liz Cheney to be executed.
Okay, well, hey, all right. All right, so you go from something where there's actual demonstrable proof that efforts have been made to try to allow illegal immigrants the right to vote in elections, which is obviously BS. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. But now you go to a legitimate complaint about Liz Cheney supposedly being targeted for firing squad territory. Okay. I'm getting some mixed messages here. Are you paying attention to anything at all?
To be in front of a firing squad. And
yeah.
If you would watched what he said in context.
Yes.
That was taken out of context. You know,
yes.
He was not saying that.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go back and address the idea that illegal immigrants, non-citizens of the United States, that there's no policies, procedures, or otherwise either currently in place or having been proposed to try to allow them to vote in federal elections? Are you sure about that?
He was saying that she's a neocon who supports wars, like in Iraq, for example, and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that how would she feel if it was her that was facing the firing?
Yes. Okay. Well, good on you for at least bringing this up. I wasn't sure you were going to. It confuses me that you'd bring up an absolutely legitimate mischaracterization of facts by the media on the one side, but you're not willing to address any possible... I'm confused by this guy.
As opposed to the people that they are sending off, the soldiers they're sending off to die. Something I've heard many Democrats and Republicans that are anti-war, far left and far right, historically say.
Yeah.
So that environment, the fact that information is being used in service of a political agenda. And
none of that makes you question the quote-unquote expertise of the blue check, not the blue check, the non-blue check journalists out there? Aren't you arguing against your own point?
That is what matters to you, is one of the most damaging things I see facing democracies today. It is...
No, dude, you just spent a whole section of your talk telling us that citizen journalists should not be given credence because they are not experts. They are not trained journalists. And yet you just brought up a legacy media-wide lie about Liz Cheney, and you're not willing to go back and say, golly gee whiz, why do people distrust the media so much? Why do people put more faith into quote-unquote citizen journalists with blue check marks than they do with the experts and trained journalists? Are you listening to yourself?
Is an unsustainable trajectory. We will not maintain our democracy if we continue with it. I get things wrong all the time.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing that.
I'll make an analytic call, and I thought Trump was going to win, and he won. But back in 2016, I thought Trump was going to lose, and
A lot of people thought Trump was going to lose. I don't blame you for that one.
I had reasons to believe that, and I was wrong. And
Yeah? So why are we here? Why are we listening to you in the first place?
Came out and explained why I thought I was wrong.
I don't care. What do you have to offer us now?
I get things wrong all the time.
Great, you're human. What? I'm starting to question why I started listening to you in the first place. Why are we here?
But I do it honestly.
What? Do you? Do you? You just listed, thankfully, and I thank you for it, you listed a specific example of the legacy mainstream media misconstruing something Trump said into one of the most dire predictions of what he would do as president, fueling the fear and the hysteria and the paranoia over him being some kind of murderous, oncoming dictator, again, because it's not like we haven't been through 2016. And yet just a few moments prior to that, you were telling us how citizen journalists don't have the expertise or the training to deliver information to the populace like real journalists. Oh.
It's not in service of a political agenda.
Wait. How do I know that? You just told me you are an untrustworthy narrator. Why should I believe you now?
I work my ass off.
Do you? I mean, I'm not a professional commentator or journalist, and I reached most of the same conclusions in your introduction as you did. So, how much work did I do?
As do all the analysts at Eurasia Group, to try to help people understand and explain what is happening in the world.
Well, if you're the spokesperson for the Eurasia Group as to what's happening in the world and understanding it, you're a poor poster child.
And, not just from a left or a right-wing perspective, or an American or a Canadian or a Russian or a Chinese perspective. And I travel all over the world and talk to people from all over the world to
No. I understand that stupidity, partisan informed information can run across the planet. I understand that. Thanks.
try to help inform that.
Oh, I feel really informed. Not.
That is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the information that people digest today politically, and particularly today politically in the 2-year run-up to a $10 billion national U.S. election.
I don't even... Are you trying to justify your own position and or organization's importance or something? What are you... I thought this was going to be a... From the title. Okay, let me read you the title. The official title. Trump's 2024 election win and what's next. Ted explains the world with Ian Bremmer. I'm waiting for the what's next. We're already on the what has been. Unburdened by what could be. What's next?
And that is no way to run a representative democracy. And all the people...
It's a constitutional republic. It is a constitutional republic. It is not a representational democracy. If you don't even know that, why should I trust anything you have to say in the realm of political analysis? Constitutional republic.
Out there that are saying that they don't believe in their media and they don't believe in their elites, they don't believe in their political leaders.
You just gave us reason not to believe in the media. The Liz Cheney story, the only demonstrable example you've given us so far. Are you listening to yourself?
Their Congress, their executive, even their business leaders, even their scientists, they don't believe in them. That's why they're saying that.
And do they have no reason to believe that?
Is because they're existing in an environment that they can no longer ascertain truth from fiction.
Right. We're just unthinking masses who can't think for ourselves, who can't suss out whether something we're hearing from somebody might be legitimate or not. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there who will just sit in their own bubble, not listen to any other opinions, and believe the first thing that they're told. It's true. It's true. But do you think those people outnumber people who are willing to stop for a second and say, wait a second, or I'm going to go look that up, or think to themselves, is that true? You know, one of the, I think, I mean, if I have to look for the thinnest of silver linings on this dark cloud, the fact that the mainstream media has, especially in the last, say, 4 or 5 months or so, consistently been so comically wrong about things, so hilariously partisan about things, it's caused people who might not otherwise have questioned the media to stop for a second and think to themselves, wait a second, and become healthfully skeptical. Healthfully skeptical. And this leads to critical thinking. So in a way, I have to thank the mainstream media for being so terrible at their jobs that they're actually taking people that might otherwise have just floated through their day and just sort of like shrugged their shoulders to actually have to question whether or not they're being told the whole story by the people they would otherwise supposedly have to trust. Now, I think that is going to be one of, if not the biggest boon from this last election cycle, is that critical thinking and questioning the sources of information is going to go up. And that's a good thing.
That's not a sustainable place to be.
It seems like a deeply dangerous place to live in. You floated something yesterday that I hadn't heard and thought was really interesting.
Oh boy, a new idea? Give me a new idea.
That was that potentially Musk might buy Truth Media. Do you?
Wait, I hadn't heard that before. Elon Musk is going to buy Truth Social. Okay.
Have you thought any more about that? Do you think that might happen? And what does that mean if that does happen?
I literally had not heard that theory before. Is it some chat? You'll have to tell me. Is Elon Musk? Has she floated the idea that he'd buy Truth Social? I mean, after Trump's election, I think its value went up through the roof, so it'd be a heck of a lot more difficult to buy now than it was a week ago. If he was going to buy Truth Social, he should have bought it like last Tuesday. I've never heard that before. Admittedly, I don't keep my finger on the pulse of social media trends. But okay, Ian Bremmer, tell us more about this.
So, first of all, I have a hard time imagining that Trump is going to, as president, be able to continue to own and post on Truth Media. Now,
he was able to post on Twitter all the time when he was president previously. He might not be able to run the company. He'd probably have to hand that off to somebody else and delegate, but Ian, you do understand that posting on social media doesn't take all that much effort. You already told us how, like, non-important citizen journalists with blue check marks are.
You know, there are unprecedented things can happen. And Trump has said that, you know, you cannot, as sitting president, commit a crime. So, I mean, in principle, that means that rule of law as applies to him is what he says it is.
What are you What? Wait. How do you get from he's not going to have time to post on social media to I can do whatever I want because it's not a crime under the rule of law? What?
The Supreme Court has punted on that in terms of what an official act is. So, you know, we'll see.
Okay, maybe it's the pepper jack. I'm having a very difficult time following that train of logic that's just then.
Where that goes, we're going to be in an unprecedented place.
Will we be? You know, I was told over and 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 over again during the first Trump administration. And you can track this if you go back to the old Lords of the Night episodes. I was told over and over again how everything he did was unprecedented. A president has never done this. A president has never done that. It's traditional for a president to do this or that. And I was just like, but it's not a law. doing something unprecedented doesn't make it immediately wrong. It might be ill-advised. It might be, it might turn out to be a bad choice. But I gotta tell you, unprecedented doesn't really scare me anymore like it might have done in the past.
But certainly I could easily imagine
Uh-huh.
that, first of all, I believe that Musk's $75 million in favor of Trump is probably the smartest strategic political bet that I have seen made by a billionaire, by an oligarch in the United States in my life.
70. Okay, admittedly, I haven't tracked. What's $75 million? Elon Musk, I mean, did he give that to like a PAC or something? I don't know. What's $75 million?
I've never seen one that I think is likely to pay off better than what Elon just did. Remember, this was a Biden supporter.
Wait, so Elon was a Biden supporter and now he paid $75 million to Trump? And wait, hold on. Elon Musk is an oligarch? Okay, I have to refresh myself on definitions here because while being an English major, I am not Encyclopedia Brown. Oligarch. A small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institution. I mean, if you're talking about him being an oligarch of Tesla or SpaceX or something, or now Twitter, I guess, if that's what you mean. But I don't think that's what he means. Or if that's what he does mean, he needs to clarify it, because to use that word is awfully... that's a loaded term.
And he turned off from Biden when Biden decided not to invite him to the electric vehicle summit.
Is that how that worked? I don't know. If somebody personally insults you, I can't imagine why that might turn you off from somebody. What?
Because, Tesla, even though it's way in front on electric vehicles,
I think it is in front on electric vehicles.
Is in a union shop. And Biden decided he was going to play politics with that as opposed to lean into ensuring that the U.S. has the best possible electric vehicle future in the world.
So is that not a good reason for Elon Musk to not favor Biden anymore?
Elon took exception to that.
I guess I would too, if the marquee business that I've been promoting for years and years and years was dissed.
Turned against Biden.
Yeah.
And the rest, as we say, is history.
Okay, well, it might be petty after a fashion, but it's understandable. So what is your complaint again?
The own goal by the president, and I hope he's reflecting on how that was a really dumb thing for him to do.
I guess so. What $75 million is he talking about? I know Elon did some like $1 million lottery thing for registering in Pennsylvania or whatever. Is that what he's talking about? He doesn't provide any context for what he's...
Leaving that aside.
Leaving that aside? Why? You brought it up. Why would you leave it aside?
I think that Elon is now in a unique position to help formulate what the values of the United States are.
Okay, if you want to know what the values of the United States are, I would direct you to the Constitution. I often hear it said that America has no culture or something. We have no shared culture. There's nothing like that. I would direct you to the fundamentals and the intentions, both original and since extrapolated, of the U.S. Constitution. What do you think Elon is going to do?
And to distribute those algorithmically from himself with his hundreds of millions of followers and from the President of the United States.
He's going to distribute his values What are you talking about? What values unique to Elon Musk is he going to impart via Trump to the rest of us. What do you mean?
There are ways that could be used to promote American interests. There are ways that those could be used that are inimical to U.S. interests.
They could go one way. They could go another way. Oh my God. I don't know. Why are we listening to you? Why is Ted listening to you?
I promise, if Elon does things that I think are useful, you'll be the first to hear it from me.
Oh, yeah, dude, I know that the next time Elon Musk does something, the first place I'm going to go is find out what Ian Bremmer thinks about it.
So, for example...
Example? Oh, glory be! Give me an example.
I was in China recently. I met with the leadership.
Were you in Tiananmen Square by any chance? Was Tim Waltz there? Was he carrying a firearm in combat?
I met with Wang Yi and members of the Politburo, many others.
Name drop means nothing to me. Okay.
Elon Musk had recently been to China, and he travels there frequently.
So you weren't there with Elon Musk. You just happened to be in a country that Elon Musk has previously visited. Okay.
And they all wanted to know from me, well, Elon is presenting himself as the guy that can help ensure that U.S.-China relations don't become maximally confrontational if Trump becomes president. Is that true? Is he the guy?
Bob, you are my number one guy. So, all these Chinese officials were asking you about the mindset and the political positioning of Elon Musk. Is he going to be the guy? All right, and what did you tell all these really important... Do you think there'll be some kind of adversarial notion between a Trump administration and China? You mean, unlike the previous Trump administration, absent Elon Musk, where Trump was totally along with China for the ride? If ever you wanted to know what the phrase "passed as preamble," in order to apply that to something, take a look at what Trump's policy was towards China when he was president last. What the heck does Elon Musk's involvement have to do with assessing how Trump might approach China in a second administration? But okay, all right. So there's all these really big, important Chinese bigwigs. They ask you, Ian, is Elon Musk the guy?
And of course, Elon has very, very strong business interests.
Worldwide.
In China.
In China.
Developing artificial intelligence with Chinese scientists.
Oh my gosh.
Tesla on the ground, manufacturing and selling into the Chinese market.
Yeah.
China's very important for Elon.
One of the largest economic powers on the planet. Very important to a businessman. Is he the guy?
And certainly, Elon would not want there to be a decoupling between the U.S. and China.
Okay, how did you answer these guys? I'm on the edge of my seat. They asked you this question. What was your answer to them?
And I think that he's going to have a lot of influence over U.S. tech policy that might, especially because Trump didn't really have a technology policy in his.
I have a sneaking suspicion that somewhere in the course of the Trump campaign, he does have a technology policy. I'm happy to be proven wrong.
First term, he had a tariff policy on China.
Yes! Now, what did his tariff policy on China indicate to you as to how he might approach China the second time around? What has Biden's policy towards China been that Trump might counteract now? Mr. Political Analyst, head of several organizations trying to educate the world on what's going on politically. What does past as prologue tell you?
But the CHIPS Act and the export controls on semiconductors, that was all done under Biden. And
yes, it was. And so, in comparing and contrasting former Trump policy with currently in place Biden policy, what does that tell you as to what might happen regardless of Elon Musk's presence?
And so Elon, to the extent that he cares about anything, it's going to be technology policy. He's going to have, I think, a very strong position to be able to help determine who's appointed in those key technology positions under Trump, and also what kind of regulations, subsidies, stimulus will be enacted by a Trump administration.
It doesn't sound like you're talking about a Trump administration. It sounds like you're talking about a Musk administration. Do you think that Donald Trump is just going to, what, rubber stamp anything Elon Musk tells him? I mean, if you think that's what's going to happen, then say that's what you think's going to happen. I mean, Trump has a lot of people talking to him right now, Elon Musk included, certainly, but a lot of others. And I don't know if you recall this. I realize it was only 4 years ago. Donald Trump had a lot of people around him when he first started becoming president that were on his side and said everything he wanted to hear to have him recruit them into his leadership, his cabinet, and otherwise. But, I've been told by some reliable sources that a whole bunch of people who initially supported him eventually had a falling out with him. So, do you think Elon Musk really has Trump by the proverbial cojones such that he will direct all technology policy? I mean, you do analyze history to get some notion of what the future might hold, right? Do you think Elon Musk, all by his lonesome, is going to direct Trump's policy towards China? Or do you think Trump might already have some pre-established notions about how he might approach China economically?
For technology, broadly speaking, and of course for Elon's own companies, which I expect he'll benefit from mightily. Now,
yeah, okay.
The question will be,
yes, I'm still waiting for what you told these Chinese officials when they asked you, is Elon going to be the guy?
Is Elon going to be able to facilitate a more functional relationship between the U.S. and the Chinese in advanced technologies?
I don't know. Is Elon Musk going to be the Secretary of State? No, seriously, is Elon Musk up to be Secretary of State? Because we have this whole... I don't know if you know this, Ian Bremmer. We have this whole apparatus, this whole department in the U.S. government called the State Department. The department that handles diplomacy to other countries. So, is Elon Musk going to become the Secretary of State? Because if he is, then, well, I guess I'd have to take your speculation seriously. And I don't know, is Elon Musk up for Secretary of State? I mean, in the grand scheme of Trump's decision-making, I wouldn't be surprised. I doubt it that he'd pick Elon Musk, of all people, to be Secretary of State, but I'd be happy to hear it.
And the answer to that may well be yes.
The answer to that may well be yes. Why? Why do you think that?
And if Elon helps avoid a Cold War between the U.S. and China, I will absolutely say that. Now,
What? Okay, all right. You know what? If Elon Musk, by his lone hand, helps us avoid a Cold War with China, I, too, will be all there for it. I mean it sincerely. I await the tweet that prevents a Cold War between China in the United States from Elon Musk. I will frame it. I'll put it on my wall.
Now, we know that Trump has had a strong view on wanting to enact much stronger tariffs on China.
Oh gosh, where would we have gotten that idea from? Oh, could have been from his previous presidency. Thanks, Ian.
For a very long time. Well,
Yeah, at least since 2016.
before he got involved in politics.
Oh, okay. Well, great. All right. Well, past his prologue. What the heck does Elon have to do with China policy then?
He's thought the tariffs were, a critical component of U.S. economic and foreign policy.
Okay, so you already have some idea of what Trump's philosophy is going to be on China. So why bring Elon into this at all?
Trump's America First means more capital in the United States,
Yeah.
more jobs in the United States.
Yeah.
It means, reining in free trade and
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on what you're talking about.
market access, and instead using the power of the dollar and of the size of the American market and the strength of industrial policy to get other countries around the world to nearshore with the Americans.
I don't necessarily understand all the terminology there, but sure, yes. He wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States. He wants to bring jobs back to the United States. He wants to stop kowtowing and deferring to foreign countries on policy decisions or economic decisions. Yes, I think I understand that. I think I understood that back in 2016.
And Lighthizer in particular, who I expect will run trade in some manifestation.
I don't know who this is. Lighthizer?
Under Trump, has said he wants to see 60% tariffs on all Chinese exports.
Well, do you actually think he's going to get that? Or is he just sort of like shooting for the moon and hoping for the mountains?
Oh, is Elon going to be able to, help facilitate a deal on that?
Okay. Maybe I missed something. I understand that Elon Musk has become a major proponent of Donald Trump. I get that. I understand that he has even been a financial contributor to Donald Trump. Is Elon Musk up for some financial tariff advisory committee? And I'm asking sincerely, I don't know. Where is this guy getting this notion from?
With a China that is facing very serious economic challenges right now? And the answer to that is untested.
What? Why am I listening to you?
That's a very interesting proposition.
What did you say to the Chinese officials? I am still waiting to hear how you answered them when they asked you, "Hey, Ian, is Elon Musk the guy?"
That the Chinese are hoping Elon will help with, and he has said, I'll be able to help with. Now,
is the Chinese government pinning their hopes on Elon Musk to be their man Friday with the Trump administration?
If it turns out that he's able to help with that, this guy is absolutely golden in the United States and in China. He could become the most powerful person on the planet.
Elon Musk could become the most powerful person on the planet. I guess it's possible. Is this what you said to the Chinese officials who asked you if Elon was the guy?
If he is not able to do that...
Well, if he's not able to do that, then I guess he wouldn't be the most powerful on the planet. Okay, let me summarize what I get from this guy so far. Hey guys, can you imagine a scenario where Superman has to fight the Hulk? I can imagine a scenario where Superman has to fight. I'm talking about like the brute, brainless Hulk of classic days. Okay. So the Hulk is running amok in Gotham City. Let's overlap things quite a bit here. He's running amok in Gotham City, and Superman gets word of this. He hears it through his supervision. He flies to Gotham City in like lickety-split, and he's there, and he's got to face off against the Hulk. But Superman gets a notion that the Hulk is sort of like not doing this intentionally. He's just a rabid monster. Okay, no, Superman is fighting the Hulk, right? Okay. Now, what if Superman wins that fight? What do you think happens? What if the Hulk wins that fight? What do you think happens? Okay, well, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Then he will be in a personal position of having directly disappointed the Chinese president.
Oh my God! And then the Chinese president will do what in your estimation?
And their leadership. And
yeah,
I would not want to be in that position.
Because why? Because why, Ian? What would if Elon Musk made a play to normalize relations in some way, shape, or form with China and the United States, and he failed? If Elon Musk was the Secretary of State and he failed at that, and the Chinese president was upset that Elon Musk did not make him happy, what would happen? What would the Chinese president do to Elon Musk? Tell me.
That strikes me as a challenging position to be in for someone who does a lot of business in China.
Okay, so you think that the president of China is going to kick Elon Musk, Tesla, all of his business interests out of China if Elon Musk fails to normalize financial or economic relations between Donald Trump and China? Is that what you're saying now?
So that's going to be an incredibly interesting thing to watch.
I guess if it actually happens, I'm still not quite sure I understand how you reach that scenario in the first place. Again, and I'm being sincere here. Maybe I missed it. Is there some notion that Donald Trump is going to make Elon Musk our diplomat to China? Or that he's going to make Elon Musk the Secretary of State or something? Why are we even imagining the scenario in the first place, Ian?
And I mean, we're gonna see this play out again. We have a lot of pieces that are moving.
Yeah, and supposedly you have the expertise and training to give us some guidance on where things are going to go, right?
Politically around the world, this is only one. There are other really big ones, Europe, the Middle East, right? But this is one that's really, really interesting.
Really, really interesting.
Super interesting and
super. It's double dog interesting.
Some very big personalities that will be arguing constructively about it all, I'm sure. Okay.
Oh yeah, constructively. I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. Move on.
So let's talk about foreign policy. Let's get into it.
Please. Wait. We already were. We're talking about China and tariffs. We're already talking about foreign policy.
Zelensky obviously reached out to Trump almost immediately that he won the election.
He would have to, because Trump and the U.S. purse is his lifeline. And
was very complimentary to him. But so what is going to happen with Russia, Ukraine? What are you seeing there?
Okay, well, here, before Ian speaks, let me see what I see. There was a question asked of Donald Trump in the Harris-Trump debate that I found absolutely bizarre. There's a point at which where, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, I think, one of the moderators asked Trump, do you want Ukraine to win the war? And I found that just absolutely baffling. Because I tried to think to myself for a second, what would Ukraine, quote unquote, winning the war look like? I mean, did the moderator imagine that Ukrainian troops are going to be marching through Moscow and sort of taking over? Now, the only winning of that conflict, the only reasonable winning of that conflict is a negotiated peace. And that negotiated peace is probably going to mean some surrender of territory to Russia. Ukraine as a nation, in the most idealized scenario, is going to be a geographically smaller territory by the end of it, because a negotiated peace is the only outcome there. Russia has no means or reason to stop pushing on Ukraine, and Ukraine cannot last forever pushing back against Russia, the Russian war machine. So Ukraine isn't going to win the war. The best it can hope for in the long run is to maintain most of its borders. I don't know what else that they're hoping or expecting to have happen. But okay, yes, Zelensky having no choice in the matter because the United States is, for the most part, in grand terms, Ukraine's only lifeline for funding and weapons. Of course he's going to congratulate Trump. He has no choice but to, and try to get on his good side. So, where are we going now?
And how could Zelensky not, Helen?
Exactly. Boy, oh boy, I'm still wondering, why am I listening to you when I could make the exact same statement reflexively like that? And I'm not even a trained journalist.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, this is, he is a master communicator.
Zelensky is a master communicator?
He's been out there marketing himself and his cause with everybody. Trump has even called him like doing the best sales job on the United States. And on the one hand, that's critical because Trump thinks that the U.S. is spending far too much on Ukraine. On the other hand, it's begrudging admiration.
Is it begrudging admiration? And if it is begrudging admiration, what do you think that makes the outlook for Trump's relationship for Ukraine in this matter?
Because Trump sees himself as the best salesperson out there.
I think the results of the election might give some credence to that idea.
Right? So, I mean, you know, as my mom would say, don't shit a shitter.
Oh, God. Well, hello, fellow kids.
She always say that when she was alive. I saw a flash of my mom in Trump's comment there.
I don't want to imagine a flash of your mom.
I think that the fact that Zelensky said, congratulations, great win. You know, we had a wonderful meeting together in the United States in September, and I want to work with you.
Well, it's not that he wants to work with them. He has to work with them.
That is not likely to be reciprocated.
Probably not. Not in the same way, at least. And why is that? Tell me true, Ian. Why is that?
By the great man, the president-elect.
Oh, don't sound salty or anything, Ian.
I suspect that he wants to end the war. He has said he will end it in 24 hours. Now Trump does exaggerate. It might not be 24. It could.
Oh, you don't say, huh?
Be a long weekend. There could be bathroom breaks in there. But he has repeatedly said, I'm going to end this war.
Yeah, and again, like I say, if it is going to end anywhere in Ukraine's favor, it's going to be a settled peace with some giving up of territory. That's it. That's it. That is Ukraine winning. Short of a total Russian takeover of Ukraine, the only possible positive outcome that has ever existed has been a settled peace with the surrender of certain territory to Russia. That's it. That's it. Anybody thinking otherwise is not being honest with themselves.
I don't even need to be president. I can just do it in the lame duck. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, he's not even president yet, and already we're hearing from like Hamas wants to surrender, basically, and a whole bunch of other things are changing on the prospect of Trump coming into the presidency. So I don't know. Maybe we will have some kind of peace before January 20th. It'd be amazing.
Well, it means he wants to stop the fighting.
Yes, he wants to stop the fighting. He wants things to get back to normal. He wants everybody to do business again and peace to reign so that everybody can profit.
Really does.
Yes.
And to be fair, I know a lot of people in the Biden administration, running the Biden administration, that want to end the war.
You don't say.
Because they think that the Ukrainians are losing and it's going to get harder and harder over time.
Yeah, they're being ground down into defeat the longer it goes on. That's why the only hope for Ukraine as a nation is a settled peace and a surrender of territory to Russia. That's just the pragmatic reality. Short of a Russian absolute takeover, that's the best you can hope for.
But you got to convince Zelensky to do that.
Well, you have to convince Zelensky and Putin to do that. You realize that Putin is at least half of the equation here, right?
Now, what I expect Trump will do will be call Zelensky, call Putin, and say, you've got to freeze the conflict where it is. No more fighting. That means Russia, you basically are occupying the territory you're occupying.
Yeah.
But you don't get to keep bombing the rest of Ukraine. Ukraine, you got to take it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about defending your cities. And then we'll sit down and we'll have negotiations on what that's going to look like going forward.
Oh, so what you mean is a settled... Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to listen to this guy anymore. This guy's not telling me anything that I didn't already figure out on my own or couldn't have gamed out just from my armchair. I've been going at this for almost 2 hours. I've listened to effectively half of this talk. I'm getting a little tired of it. I don't know about you. If you'd like me to do a part 2, let me know in the comments. Let me know on the Discord server. By the way, do you know that I have a Discord server? Well, let me tell you. I have a Discord server. Now, if I told you that I prepared a link for the Discord server before the stream started, would you believe me? If you do, I appreciate your trust. But the truth is, I didn't. But now that I have, there's a link in the chat for the Discord server. If you'd like to join the Discord server, click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, even if you have a blue check mark, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is Bremmer. B-R-E-M-M-E-R. Just say, hello, Bremmer, and I'll know that you watched the stream. Oh, boy. You see, I was excited. I don't know why I did this. This was a TED presentation, not a TEDx talk. This is a TED presentation in a series of explaining the world, apparently. And I listened to half of Ian Bremmer explaining absolutely nothing I hadn't already thought of myself, or the things that he did bring up that I hadn't thought of before, not effectively explaining how he reached that conclusion. So there you go. I guess I can run some kind of nonprofit organization that advises the world on political comings and goings. I'd believe it. But with that, guys, I'm going to draw it here. Take a moment here for anything you'd like to say. Jill Powers, the River Daughter. Yeah, no thanks. Scribe like this guy's an idiot. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out for myself, and that's why I listened. I listened intently. I didn't just assume. I gave him a fair shot. I think 20 minutes into a 45-minute presentation is a fair shot to convince me that this guy's worth listening to. Ultimately, not really. Dexter's Killer Lab. He's got a gift for shitty gab. I'll give him that. I mean, for anybody, I go back to something that I've talked about this before. A long time ago, I can still remember an episode of Lords of the Night where we looked at an article from then Chris Celiza's personal Igor, Harry Enton, describing something about politics in an article on CNN. This is before Harry Enton became CNN's Steve Kornacki, for those of you that follow those kind of things. Anyway, Harry Enton wrote an article that I was reading about Donald Trump and his political strategy and everything, and by the time I got to the end of the article, I was just like, this is the most lame, stupidest, bare bones, boilerplate article about how politics work I've ever read. This is something that you'd see a third grader writing about how to explain politics. And I thought it was a really, really stupid article. But then Sinatra Says, who was on the show at that time, in his eternal wisdom, stopped me for a second and said, well, wait a second. This article is completely useful for people that have absolutely no idea how politics works. And I thought, that's right. A lot of people have other things to do with their lives, more important things to do than pay attention to the media and politics and everything else. I live in a kind of bubble of my own making, so sure. Maybe this is useful for those that have better things to do than pay attention to the news cycle all the time. So in that sense, maybe there's something useful here for somebody who doesn't think about these things as often as I do or someone else might, so maybe. But all the same, at least for my own edification, this guy brought nothing to the table I couldn't have figured out on my own, or didn't predict he would say ahead of time before he said it. So anyway, anybody else before I clock out here. Faustonia, crazy how Donald was supposed to get us into World War III, but right after Biden got in, we got into a proxy war with a nuke nation. Totally crazy. Yeah. It's amazing how the same predictions I heard before Trump took over in 2016, I'm hearing now. And I'm like, well, if he was going to do half of what you guys are saying he was going to do, why didn't it happen 8 years ago? Why are we only worrying about these things within the last 3.5, 4 years? It's nuts. They ran against an incumbent who was not an incumbent and worrying about things he was going to do that he didn't do the first time around. It's amazing. Anyway, if I missed anybody's comment or anything you have to say, please leave it in the comments below after this stream has posted, or go to the Discord server, join the Discord server, and speak your mind there. Also, please be sure to like and share and subscribe if you haven't already. What else do I have to say as a YouTuber? Oh yeah, tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. I'll be doing the Sunday stream where I'll go over some interesting stories from the course of the last week. Probably most of them will have something to do with the election because, man, the fallout from that and the revelations thereof have been interesting, to say the least. So stay tuned for that. Always Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can find me here for TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks, something more usually interesting than this. But here's a special announcement. Tentatively, I just have to confirm by Monday because schedules can change. But right now, as I speak, Wednesday next week will be a special edition of TED Excellence where I'll have on a guest. I'll tell you who that guest is, even though it's subject to change because life happens. But at least as of right now, next Wednesday, the master of the TDS, and that doesn't actually stand for Trump derangement syndrome. It's actually a Magic the Gathering reference. But anyway, master of the TDS, the algorithmic warrior, the slayer of Sweet Baby Inc., but in his real life is also a professional therapist, will be joining me for a TED Excellence dealing with therapy. So looking forward to that next Wednesday. More information to come as I have the times and everything firmed up. Follow me on X/Twitter. I don't have a blue check mark, so I'm not technically a citizen journalist. @scribe_light. Otherwise, everybody, thank you for joining me today. Moderators, thanks for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of your Saturday and Sunday ahead of you. If you have the day off for Monday for Veterans Day, enjoy your Monday off and keep our veterans in mind. They are the reason we are here and able to do this in the first place. Otherwise, everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.